I, Ishita Tyagi, Assistant Professor Law, Coordinator of today's session, welcomes you all. As we all know, IIC, Institutions Innovation Council of IIMT College of Law, is organizing a series of events to inculcate among the youth the spirit of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship under the guidance of our respected Director Ma'am Dr. Monica Rastogi. Today we have Professor Dr. Bhaskar Gupta, who will be our esteemed speaker, and he will speak on the topic pitching event for POCs developed and linkage with Innovation Ambassador for mentorship support. Dr. Bhaskar Gupta, veteran academician, cum research scientist, and director NITRA Technical Campus, joined as an officiating director and dean at IIMT Group of Colleges, Greater Noida in 2020. Dr. Gupta completed his BE in 2001 and MTech with honors in 2006. While electronics and communication has been his core area, Dr. Gupta, in his academic career spanning for more than 19 years, now has taught various subjects at both UG and PG level in many renowned institutes. He is presently working as a president of IIC Cell, and trained as an innovation ambassador by Ministry of Education Innovation Cell. He is also coordinator for NISP and ARIIA. He has been taking sessions on innovation, entrepreneurship, design thinking, IPR, BMC, technology readiness level, critical thinking since last 10 years across the country. He is the startup founder. He has more than 2 Indian patents filed, 2 copyrights, and 2 book chapters in CRC Press. Dr. Gupta wears many hats as an academic professional. His works, other than basic teaching, include publishing and presenting several papers in national and international journals, guiding MTech projects, working on various state and central government sponsored projects, and traveling around USA, South Korea, Oman, Afghanistan, Dubai, and Ethiopia on academic cum research mission in association with world's renowned universities. Notable among his R&D research and development achievements are commercialization of electronic eye for blind people in collaboration with MSME Delhi, developing UAVs in collaboration with Korean Aerospace Industries Association, South Korea, working on DRDO sponsored project on robotics, completing NASCOM-based projects on software-defined radio and mentoring students for Microsoft Imagine Cup competition under software category. He has been 6 times coordinator for IIT Delhi Virtual Lab Program and working as Noble Coordinator for IIRS ISRO Outreach Program and IITM SWAM NEPTEL Program. Today he is with us to grace this event. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ishita, for such a nice and wonderful introduction about me. A very good afternoon to one and all present here for today's session on pitching event for POCs developed and linkage with innovation ambassadors. I have to inform you that this is one of the quarter activities under Institutions Innovation Council 4.0, which is an initiative of Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, and the faculties have already been trained across the country as innovation ambassador in order to promote the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship among the students, and in order to create such ecosystem around the country, in order to nurture the ideas of budding entrepreneurs who are willing to be successful innovator or successful entrepreneurs. The topic every day I'm going to speak is somewhat related to the business development process or customer creation or the customer development process. So we, as a innovator who are looking for opening their startups, enterprise or business ventures, we really need to incorporate and implement all these at our workplace. So let me just thank you, Dr. Monica Rastogi, the director of the Law College, Dr. Sudhakaran, head of the department, Dr. Ishita, for giving me an opportunity to express my views on today's topic. Hopefully, the session is going to be very enriching and very insightful. And I hope by the end of this session, the students will really try to inculcate those spirits within them in order to be in the successful entrepreneur or the successful innovator. So now I'm going to present and let me begin with my presentation. So today's welcome to today's. Is it? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir, the presentation is visible.
Okay. So let me just start with it, and it is about the pitching trend for POCs. POC means proof of concept, which you have to develop when you are in the early stages of any business venture or startup. Whenever you want to start your business. So what is a proof of concept? This needs to be understood clearly. The proof of concept is creating evidence and documentation about the feasibility of an idea. It is about the, feasibility means you have to be, and you have to understand whether your problem is worth solving or not. The idea on which you are working is viable or not. The problem which you have identified is viable or not. It outlines how the idealized product or service would become market ready and how it would function, if it is needed, and who is the target demographic. So you have to be aware of customers' sociographic data as well as demographic data. That is very important. While the proof of concept has numerous applications ranging from marketing to medicine, when it comes to software development, it applies to a specific process. So proof of concept is not just meant for one specific area. In fact, in the last decade, the proof of concept repository has already been developed for software development industries as well. For software specific ideas, a POC is an act of determining if the software can be built in the real world, what technologies should be used in development, and whether the software is likely to be adopted by its intended user. What is the proof of why is it important? In creating a proof of concept, you are essentially laying out on paper why your idea would be successful in the market. That is very important to focus on, because you have to be ready with your pen and paper in order to understand whether your developed product, process or concept is readily acceptable by your end users or customers. Think of it like a business plan
रजिस्टर
or
रख
a
के बोलते
software
हैं ऐसे,
idea.
तो हम ये भी क्या कहते हैं यहाँ पे स्क्रीनशॉट, ये स्क्रीन माइनस करके बोल, रीड करके भी बोल सकते हैं इस पे।
अगर आप शेयर स्क्रीन नहीं करोगे तो बोल सकते हो।
हाँ ना, विदाउट शेयरिंग स्क्रीन हम बोल तो सकते हैं ना।
Though the inclination to skip making a POC can be tempting,
जब आप कॉपी रहोगे वो भी वहीं पे आएगा स्क्रीन पे वहीं पे।
it's important to fully flesh out your idea for a few reasons. it is very important to understand about the validity and feasibility in the beginning. Before you skip to the development, it's crucial to know whether your idea is feasible. Can it be built with your budget? Is there a demand for it in the market? You have to focus on testing equally. So many startups waste time and money building something they think people want, only to go back and change it when they get feedback that their idea meets the mark. Taking a proof of concept and testing it with your potential user base will help you get early feedback on what people actually want. You can then streamline your ideas development, thus saving you many hours and dollars spent on solving the wrong problems. So I have already discussed, you have to be very, very careful whenever you are going to develop any product, you are working for a process or the concept. So you have to understand whether the identified problem by empathizing with customers is really, feasible. Is your problem really, having any validity? So this is very important to understand. Otherwise, you might be wasting time in some wrong direction. Money generation. If you plan on sourcing investors to back your project, you are going to need to show them you have thought your idea through to the end. Creating an early roadmap that predicts market value, possible sticky points, and how to monetize your software idea will make a strong statement in creating investor confidence in your product. Why do you need a proof of concept? Although nearly everyone who comes up with an idea is convinced that it will work, creating a proof of concept to test your idea will ensure you arrive at the best version of it and will save your time and money in the entire process. Laying out every detail about your idea will help highlight gaps in your product plan that you might not realize exist. A proof of concept is also free. So it's a low stakes way to test your idea with other people. Whether you are adding new or whether you are building something new completely from scratch, a proof of concept will ensure that you take the fastest, most direct route to the success. The entire cycle of this customer development process or the proof of concept or any startup life cycle, everybody has to start with ideation phase, where ideation refers to the generation of the idea, which can be done by using a number of techniques which are happening around us in the form of prototyping, brainstorming, brain mapping, brain writing, camper, worst possible idea, not just one, in fact, plenty of techniques are around us which can be used in order to generate creative and innovative idea, which you can turn into reality, into product, into process, or the final concept. Once you are done with ideation phase, you have to gradually move to the another stage of design thinking process, which is about to develop a written document or evidence about your idea validation, where you are going to justify that the problem identified, the idea which you are going to generate is actually going to address the problem of the customer with whom you have already empathized. So once the proof of concept is ready with you, you are ready with your documented evidence that yes, you are writing your viable idea, you are working on the right idea, you have the technologically feasible idea and as well as commercially viable idea. Now you can think of moving to next step, which is about prototyping. Yes, the prototyping is the only way to go for your problem validation your concept validation, your experimental proof of concept validation. In fact, once you are going to test your hypothesis through prototyping, you have to then come out with MVP, which is a new version of your product with some additional features which you can think of bringing into the market for final commercialization. So that is about your prototyping. So prototyping first is to be done in order to validate your idea, in order to validate your proof of concept in open environment as well as in your design team member. Once you are done with it, you have to gradually create the minimum viable product for it, where you are going to launch into the market for commercialization. Once MVP is being launched to the market, the purpose is to gather the feedback and idea from the customers, do analysis, perform synthesis. Having synthesized, you have to understand what are the drawbacks which you have to overcome. According to that, based on the feedback, you are going to perform the number of iterations, number of reiterations. You are going for piloting until you get the right and real product in your hands for the launch into the market. So you have to be very careful about validation phase. You have to test your hypothesis through prototyping, and then thereafter you have to create a new version of the product, which is known as minimum viable product with additional features. Ultimately, it is you, it is in your hands to add value to the product or the process or the service or the concept, the problem which you have formulated. It must be unique. It must have some additional features prior to launch into the market. The customer must pay value to your product, and customer will pay only when you have added features to it. If you have not added, if you have not empathized with users, definitely, certainly, no more features will be there. Scalability will be missing. You cannot think of scaling up your startup or business ventures because the feedback was not involved. So it is very important to take feedback from the customer and then you have to perform. What is the difference between the proof of concept, prototyping, and MVPs? These two terms are highly interchangeably used these days. However, these two are going to represent two different stages of any business development process. How going on with proof of concept always coming first. Down and fully formulated. I have this document with you confirming your suspicion that your idea is a good and needed product. You move on to next step, prototyping. Once you are done with proof of concept, you are now going to give assurance about your idea validation that whatever the problem was formulated, you are working on the right problem, which has been identified. And same way, you are going to perform ideation. You are going to generate right innovative idea for that problem. A prototype is the very first and basic iteration of your software idea. It takes the words from the proof of concept and brings them to life in a tangible product. So, of course, prototype is usually not intangible. You have to try to develop some tangible product. A good example of this is a software wireframes. Another instance could be if you get a design mockup that allows you to visualize the user flow and lookup of an app that is to be created. To illustrate the point, at this point of time, if your POC outline here is there an idea for an example wedding planning app which you want to create as a service, then your prototype would be a program demonstration that will allow you to click to the basic screens of that app to get a better feel for what the final product will become. If you look at the comparison between the concept and prototypes, you will come to know that what is the exact difference between these two terms. However, I have already told you these two terms are interchangeably used. Let me just, so these two terms. So this is a theoretical demonstration of your product or process or concept. About proof of concept, there is nothing physical at this stage of time, because this is just the third stage when you are going to start your business. This is something about the prototype, where the previous another version of the prototype, where you are going to have some theoretical demonstration only. You are going to determine whether an idea can be turned into reality. This is just the idea here at this stage. Proof of concept is something, where you are going to guarantee that the work which you are going to carry out is going to address the identified problem or not. You have to verify that the idea will function or not. You have to identify the potential technical and logistical issues involved that might interfere with the success during the proof of concept stage. If you are going to contrast it with its counterpart, prototype or MVP, you will come to know prototype is not at all theoretical demonstration of your product or service or the process. However, on the other side, it is actually a physical product, process, or the concept which you are going to demonstrate in front of the open public and users or customers who will be interested in buying your product based on the value which you have added or going to add to your product. It is something, prototyping is being used in order to validate your problem statement, is going to validate, is you are going to test your work inside the laboratory sometimes. But prototype, once you are ready with prototype, you have to create the minimum viable product which will be launched into the market in order to gather the feedback. So it is very important. First, you have to perform the ideation. Thereafter, you have to go for proof of concept repository. Once you are done with it, you have to go for the prototyping, and thereafter, you can go for scaling. You can think of expanding your market. You have to focus on your target customer. You have to identify that market segment in which you are going to launch. You have to be very careful about your prototype. Please don't forget this very, very important step in this journey. Once prototyping is being completed, you have to understand, you have to gather the feedback, you have to perform the analysis and synthesis. Based on that, you have to do number of iterations, and you have to implement the changes suggested by your customer about in your product or in your process or concept. So if you look at the POCs, we will come to know the POC is based on try and test approach. Usually, the POC is always going to check about the feasibility of your idea. It is about your problem, whether it is worth solving, it is relevant, it is really addressing the problem of the customer. It is about commercial viability also sometimes. No users are involved in POC, because at this time you have simply have to explain only, you have to just learn, so you are not going to discuss anything. This is existing for internal reference only. Of course, the POC stage, we are never going to disclose any POC in front of the public or openly outside the company. However, MVP is somewhat different if we compare with its counterpart POC. It has always been based on tried and tested approach. It's a basic version of the actual product. So, what is MVP? It's a very basic version of your original product, which you will be launching into the market. It is launched for external use, yes. MVP can directly be launched into the market if it is acceptable by customer, because this is the primary version of the original product. This comes after prototyping. Users have to interact with the MVPs based on their feedback. We are collecting their feedback. Once the feedback is being collected, refinement is being performed in order to improve your product or service or process or the concept. If you look at this POC, MVP, and prototyping, you will come to know the POC is the quickest way to check if the idea is feasible. This method is excellent for innovative projects when there is a higher risk of potential setbacks and problems. So POC is always focusing on feasibility issues, viability issues. Please do remember, POC has to do nothing with the end users. It has to do nothing with the benefits and functionalities. So POC is concerned about your feasibility and your viability issues. MVP is always concerned with user experience, where it's a primary version of the original product which you are going to launch into the market. And having launched it into the market, you are going to collect the feedback. You are working with user experience. You are getting their feedback. Based on their feedback, performing iterations, going to perform refinement at your workplace, trying to innovate your product or process, trying to add value to the product or process, because it is the customer only who is going to need your product, who is going to value your product. Once you have forgotten to collect the feedback from the user, as a startup founder, you have to remember your startup will fail, your idea will die. Even if you have done it so innovatively, you have added some sort of innovation in your product or process, hardly matters. What exactly matters here as a startup founder? You have to empathize with users, which is the very first step, what very first important step of any design thinking concept. A number of companies are there around us. Apple Corporation, everybody is knowing, is known for implementation of design thinking and technology readiness levels in the development of their unique and sleek design iPhones since last many years. So it is a fine example of sustainable innovation, and that iPhone today is also existing in the market, and we are going to pay higher money for it. Why? Because they have added the concept of proof of concept, design thinking, technology readiness level. They have made use of some, innovative business models while working with their products. If you are comparing it with prototyping, I have already told you prototyping. Mainly in this, we have to work with functionality and benefits of the products. It's an interactive mock-up of a product with basic features. By making something tangible, something that you can interact with, you can better understand the product and see what's missing. So if you see, if you have an idea, really innovative, you have really having some creativity, imagination. So this is very important for innovation. If idea generation is missing, creativity is missing. If imagination is not there, hopefully you will not be able to bring any kind of innovation in your product. Sometimes the invention also becomes the part of innovation, because with creativity you can develop innovation, but without innovation nothing can be commercialized in this world. That's why it is well said that innovation is a conversion of your knowledge into wealth. In fact, innovation is a complex process. Defining innovation is highly problematic. So don't forget innovation. So if you are having some innovative idea, if your idea is unique, yes, then you have to develop your proof of concept. you have to be ready with your experimental proof of concept. If you are working on some fuzzy idea where you don't have any plan, and you are not thinking of whether this particular idea will be converted into the prototype or product, then in that case, your idea may not be unique. In that case, you need not to develop any kind of experimental proof of concept before going to prototyping or minimum viable product creation. So if you look at how to determine if you need a proof of concept, here is a flow chart to let you know about it. You have an idea? Yes, I do have an innovative idea, a very creative idea. Okay, that's good. Is your idea unique? Yes, uniqueness is there in my idea. If you are ready with that kind of uniqueness in your idea, if it is yes, then definitely you need a proof of concept. In the case your idea is not having any kind of uniqueness, any kind of innovativeness is not there, then certainly no. In that case, you need not to have any kind of experimental proof of concept or POC repository, need not to be developed by you. If you look at certain benefits, business benefits I'm damn sure if you are open your startup, planning to register your startup with Government of India or Startup India or whatever it is, you have to develop your proof of concept prior to going to prototyping or MVP creation for scalability. You have to understand this. If you look at, so first you have to start with your idea, which is about ideation, which refers to idea generation. Once an innovative idea is there, has been generated by you have to gradually move to proceed scouting, which is gradually to discovery, which is a part of your basic and applied research, where you have to understand the basic principles. Basic principles have to be reported. Based on that, based on applied research, you have to identify the potential applications. Applications are being formulated under applied research or by using boot camps, attending boot camps. You can attend several boot camps around the country and attending some local training networks. Certainly something can be done in the direction of discovery, which is a part of academic research only. Once you are done with all this, you have to be ready with your proof of concept. If you are going to be a startup founder, so I'm not saying the scientist can never be a successful startup founder, because for being a successful startup founder, you should have better marketing skills, better strategic skills. You have to be a great team leader rather than owner of the business. You should have better technical skills rather than scientific skills. So do remember, the scientific research always remains in the laboratories, and there is a strong need to take it out of the laboratory by innovation only. So innovation helps to take in commercialization of lab technologies as well as technology transfer. Once you are ready with your proof of concept, you have to validate your concept, you have to validate your idea by having some testing and evaluation. You are going to discuss with market expert network also. You are going to disseminate something among the customers in order to get feedback from them about your product, process, service, or concept. Once you have validated all such things, now you have to think in the direction of business plan. You have to think in the direction of scalability. You have to think about scaling. You have to think about market expansion. You have to think about customer creation. In the entire journey of any business, please do understand it always starts with your research, gradually moves to the development, after that deployment. That anywhere, wherever you go, it is only three important steps you have to remember: formulation, development, deployment. So any business cycle is based on these three important steps. Next is about this. If you look at, you have to do a lot of preparations. So pre-migration steps you have to follow. Then you have to gather requirements. And you have to prioritize the things based on the need and wants of the customer. Next, once you have gathered the requirements, you have empathized with the customers, you have understood their needs and wants. You have to think in the direction of deployment. If once you are done with your proof of concept, if you have a validated proof of concept, validated idea, you have to go for the creation and validation phase. Once you have created, you have validated your prototype, by demonstrating it in open environment, you must have gathered the feedback. I hope you will be going to implement the suggestions provided by customers while developing any new technology, working for software development industry or product, service, whatever it is. So once you have created, you have validated your idea, you have to think about the final stage, which is about deployment. You of course have to think in the direction of deployment of your technology into the market. You have to work in the direction of support system. You have to monitor the performance. You have to measure the performance of your product one by one, gradually over the time. Next. So you will come to know, so it is very important how an idea becomes a product. It starts with an idea. It comes out in the form of an experimental proof of concept. Once you are done with it, gradually have to move to prototyping, which is a physical version of your product, but not the product which is to be launched. It is only being used for validation purposes. Please do remember. Once prototyping is done, you have to create your MVP, which is a primary version of your original product, which is to be launched into the market. And once your MVP is acceptable in market by customers, you can now think of about scaling, about the growth of your startup, about the growth of your business venture, about the growth of your enterprise. Prototype your solution and test. What happens actually after the proof of concept? Your next step is to create a prototype that wraps your solutions into a rudimentary product that you can use to test with those you interviewed previously. This prototype should have the expected feature set. So this is just the rudimentary product, the product which is in the initial product only. So this is just the rudimentary stage when you are going to validate your proof of concept. So at this stage only you can make the required changes and you have to perform refinement, you have to redevelop the things. So this is the right time. Once the prototype is built, you have to test it with your interviewees for additional feedback. You have to record their use of the product to track how intuitive the interface is and have to find out if you overlooked any important functionality. So this is also very important. So you don't have to underestimate the concept of empathy, which is one of the important steps in a journey of design thinking. So please do remember, if you know anything which is missing in your product or concept, you have to understand it, you have to re-add to your product or in your service. You have to create a minimum viable product, and MVP is different from a prototype in that it is a fully functional solution. that you can put out into the world for use. While it will be including only the most important features that are essential for solving the primary pain points you identified. It should function on the user's side just like the final product. I hope you all must have understood what is the concept of minimum viable product. It is slightly different from a prototype, and prototype is a MVP. So MVP is a primary version of the original product. The MVP gives you the ability to test the product beyond your small group of interviewees to a wider group that's more representative of your market or audience. It offers an opportunity for more feedback that will actually tell you if the product in its current iteration resonates with users and stakeholders. So you have to be very careful about MVP. MVPs actually will let you know about the performance of your product, about the feedback of the customer, whether it is acceptable in the market or not. So you have to be very careful about it. From all the information you have gathered in each of the previous steps, you have to create a roadmap that will describe what you have learned and outlines a recommended step-by-step process for building the product. Think of this roadmap as a set of blueprints for constructing a building. With this roadmap as a guide, everyone will be kept on the same page through product development and will have a clear picture of what the end goal is. Main takeaways for creating a proof of concept. At each stage, we want to stress gathering as much feedback from your intended audience as possible. The more information you know about what users actually want, the sooner you can focus on those features, cut unnecessary ones, and save yourself iteration time and expenses along the way. You can continue to fundraise at each point using these supporting documents to show investors the product's progress. Many startups fail because they skip over a proof of concept, convinced their idea is a unicorn, and rush to go straight to market. Taking some thoughtful time on a POC is a great first step to getting you on the way to a rewarding market launch. And that's right. Most of us are underestimating this particular step, and many startups failed in the last decade. I can give you a numerous examples. One example is three-dimensional television, where a concept of this, proof of concept, product market fit was underestimated, and no buyer was there. Nobody was interested in that three-dimensional television. I hope you all remember this instance. The startup failed. How to write a proof of concept? There is not a cut and dry method for writing a proof of concept. The rules are not strict like they are for other written documents, like research papers, which must all follow the same outline of intro, methods, and conclusion. And instead, it's important to make sure specific key topics are covered, however that may be. A proof of concept is a living document that can be updated as you have new thoughts and get fresh feedback from people who read it. For developing software ideas, a proof of concept should discuss the following things. Prove the need, map pain points to solutions and get feedback. Prototype your solution and test. Create a minimum viable product. Design a roadmap. Prove the need. It only makes sense to put time and money into building a product if people need it. Maybe those people are the company's employees who need to improve their productivity. Maybe they are a new market. The company is not currently serving. Could be, but could easily reach. Whoever they are, you need to know that your software will meet their needs and wants. So please do remember, dear students, you have to understand the needs and wants of the customers. Everything is in the hands of customer. Before you begin building the software, you will want to be crystal clear on the pain points your target audience is experiencing. You don't want to guess what these issues are or assume you know without actually taking to a representative sample of people in the group. Map pain points to solutions and get feedback. This step involves brainstorming ways to solve each of the pain points you have identified. There will likely be several ways to solve each issue. After you brainstorm, you will evaluate each possible solution to determine how it stacks up in reference to cost, competition, timeline, technology challenges, etc. When this process is completed, you should have a clearer idea of which solution to include in the final product. Once you have this list of solutions, you have to go back to the users and stakeholders you initially interviewed and learn their reactions and responses to the recommended solutions. Describe how you envision the product working and ask for their feedback. This input will definitely provide you with valuable insight as you are moving forward. Thank you very much, Dr. Sudhakar. That's all from my side. Over to you.
So with this, we conclude this session. On behalf of IIMT College of Law, with all due respect, I would like to thank you, sir, for your presence at this workshop and deliver such a knowledgeable lecture. Thank you all participants for being patient listeners. All of us have learned a lot today. It has been very interesting session. We really appreciate you, sir, for taking out time for all of us from your busy schedule. It's always
Thank you
been
very
our
much.
pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward
Thank you.
to see
I'm
you
always
again for
here
upcoming
to help
events,
you
sir.
out. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Thank you so much, sir.